Hello, my name is Malik Abbas Dabu. Welcome to UPfront. On UPfront, we assemble the brightest minds to answer the most difficult and nagging questions. When was the last time you were reminded of your civic rights and responsibilities? Well, an institution set up 25 years ago to do this is celebrating the Constitution, which was set up alongside the very year that this institution was set up. I'm talking about the National Commission for Civic Education, NCCE. When we come back from the break, I will introduce to you a guest who will answer the question, is this institution executing its mandate in the manner that it ought to do? You're watching UPfront. Keep watching. Rights, your civic rights and responsibilities, and the institution which is supposed to remind you, teach you, educate you, inform you, and promote sustained democracy in Ghana, the NCCE. My guest on UPfront is a deputy chairman of the NCCE in charge of finance and administration, Ms. Kathleen Adi. Kathleen, you're welcome.
Thank you, Malik.
You're looking good.
Thank you.
How is the NCCE?
NCC is doing great, thriving.
Is it?
Yes, it is.
We don't hear anything.
Oh, that can't be true, Malik.
Oh.
That cannot be true.
Well, now tell me what I ought to have heard that I have not heard.
That cannot be true. First of all, you know that NCC is a constitutional body set up by the 1992 Constitution, which, by the way, is 25 years this year. And we are in the middle of Constitution Week. NCC is, by constitution, present in every district. We do work teaching people, educating people about rights, about responsibilities. Our staff are in the districts. They engage all manner of citizens, market women, school children, university students, organized bodies, artisan bodies, all manner of people engage NCC on a daily basis. Of course, we may not be all over Joy multimedia channels because this is an expensive, it's an expensive channel, and we do appreciate the support that you give us. I mean, when we call on you, you do help us, but there's only so much that we can do. But we are definitely working. Today, for instance, we engage the Ghana Prison Service. We spend the morning with the prison service talking about the Constitution, educating the servicemen about their rights, and especially about their responsibilities. So we do work. We may not come on TV all the time because, you know, our work is not deemed, you know, sexy in that manner, but we do work.
You are right in saying you are present in all the districts. There are 216 districts, absolutely, and you have offices in all the 216 districts. Yes, we do. Growing up, the NCCE was as popular as the Electoral Commission, which is mandated to conduct elections and all of that. That can't be the case today.
Well,
you virtually don't hear of the NCCE.
It depends on what you're calling popular. What is the EC popular?
What I meant is top of mind awareness.
Right.
The general populace was aware of the NCCE as much as they were aware of the Electoral Commission. It doesn't appear to be the case today.
I don't know if it doesn't appear to be the case. But even if that is the case, you have to understand that the state has treated the NCCE and the EC very differently historically over the years. If you look at the amount of support and funding that comes from the state to the commission, these are commissions that are wholly dependent on the public purse. And if you look at the funding and support that has come over the years, you will see that NCC is treated quite different from the EC. Why is it important? It's easier to be visible, to have visibility, to be all over the place, to push your message and all of that when you are better resourced. These days, I don't complain about resources because my attitude is that we are going to do the best we can with what we have. And so that's what we are doing. When it comes to school kids, for instance, you know that last year, we launched the inter-university competition, which was very popular on university campuses across the country, with about 17 schools competing. It was won by GIMPA, the final analysis. The final was a big debate that was held at the law school auditorium at the University of Ghana. So we do have a lot of programs. We engage people in so many different ways. Debates, competitions, we do in the schools. We do dawn broadcasts in the communities where that is the best means of communication. We are on radio a lot, especially in the districts where we get a lot of airtime free, where the radio stations really value our input and all of that. So we are working. Maybe,
because
you don't get to
I
hear of
haven't
us.
seen anything. And I remember as a student journalist, and if I was an intern, I had an interview with the then Larry Bimi, who was chairman of the Electoral Commission and had been chairman for many, many years. And NCC located in the same office as the Electoral Commission. And you went to the place and you found that the place was virtually neglected and abandoned. Why do you think that has been the case historically? And you rightly said that historically is not being funded as it ought to be.
Yes, as it ought to be. I cannot answer the why, because I am not the funding authority. You have to quiz government for that.
You are in the system.
Yes, I'm in the system. I cannot tell you why. All I know is that we are doing better than before. We are not operating at the optimal level in terms of resources, but we are definitely doing better year on year.
How do you measure that?
Oh, we are talking about resources. That's what I mean.
No, okay.
I mean, in terms of resources from the state, we do slightly better than we did the previous year, and we are hoping that that is a trend that will continue. But our start-off point is so low. I mean, our need gap is so huge that I don't know if it can be turned around overnight. All I know is that we are making progress in terms of resources coming in. Very, appreciated small bits of resources, extra resources coming in. But we suspect that we'll do better in the
Let's
future.
take performance.
Right.
How do you measure the effectiveness of what you do?
Right. So as you yourself know, NCC is supposed to educate the citizens, our first tool being the Constitution. So every quarter we have a program which we send out to the districts, and the districts translate the program that we have into activities that they undertake with identifiable groups in their communities. At several points during the year, we have these flagship programs as well, which is also a means of, getting in touch with more people, pushing our message across. So we are in Constitution Week right now. Next month, we'll be doing Citizenship Week. Come September, we start the competition, the inter-university competition again. We have other different types of ways of engaging people. In terms of how we measure by counting the number of people we actually engage, do you understand, on a face-to-face basis.
It may just be very minute or insignificant numbers.
Well, it could be. I'm not disputing that. But it's way out of our hands. We are doing the best we can with what we have.
I mean, the most fundamental of your mandate is the one having to do with creating awareness of citizens' rights and responsibilities.
Absolutely.
And these tools that you just mentioned, how many can benefit from them? Because you're talking about schools, inter-schools competition, and it would seem that everything you are doing is geared towards the educated and those in school.
Oh, not at all. We do a lot of, in fact, our biggest strength lies in community engagement. That is where we do our best work. In the communities, talking to people, engaging people in the markets, on the streets, with the dawn broadcasts. Those kinds of interventions actually target everybody who has, ears to hear and eyes to see. It does not target only the educated. So, yes, we have these other things that target schools, but you do agree with me that it's important that we make sure that our educated class are well informed, just as everyone else. So we do target them, but we do have other activities that that we undertake in the communities that target others as well.
Is the average Ghanaian alive to their rights?
Well, when it comes to rights, I think the average Ghanaian is very alive to their rights. When it comes to responsibility, then maybe not so much.
Let's stick with the rights.
Okay.
Why do you think the average Ghanaian is alive to their rights?
Because in spite of every obstacle and difficulty that we've had over the past 25 years. We've actually done well with this constitution. As a country, how old is the country?
Well, we are 60,
exactly.
62.
And this 25-year stretch, the last 25 years, is the most stable our country has been, without any military intervention, without change of government by radio announcement, arbitrary change of government in that manner. So this constitution is actually, in spite of all, and we're talking about it before, you say it's a flawed document, in spite of the flaws, has actually, done well for us. Of course, the constitution is supposed to be a living document, so ideally we should, review it from time to time. And so I don't think that we are doing too badly. People know their rights because, one, the constitution has given us a type of democracy that makes people know their rights. So, for instance, let's look at media. Look at proliferation of media. Look at freedom of journalists and media to operate and exist freely without fear or favor. That kind of environment helps people to know what their rights are, because you have journalists constantly talking about issues that have to do with rights and responsibilities, or especially rights of people. I mean, you're here in Joy FM. A lot of times when people run into trouble these days, they even prefer to come to a radio station rather than a police station, isn't it?
Which is the problem, isn't it? If the citizenry were alive to their rights, if something untoward is happening, the response is not the radio station to shout. The response is to, you're talking about civic action. It's for the people to mobilize and then demand action. And I'll give you an example. There are people who argue that our members of parliament, regardless of whatever political party they come from, take the people for granted because the people do not know their rights. The constitution allows constituents to recall their MP. How many constituents do that? In fact, the MPs don't even consult them when they take decisions. They take a decision because their party says so.
And you may be right. So there are gaps. It's not a perfect system. There are huge gaps that need addressing. This MP issue is one of the things we spoke about this morning with the fire service. Because I was saying that until we get to a point where we hold the MPs accountable in a manner that responds to our real needs, we're going to continue having this problem. For now, we hold them accountable based on things like maybe school fees, direct financial support, and that sort of thing. And so probably the real work that they are supposed to do, we don't judge them on that. And I mean, they're human beings. They will only give more of what we approve of. So yes, there are gaps. Maybe people don't know that they have that much power to, recall their MP, to change the way things are, the relationship dynamic between citizens and their representatives. But like I said, we keep working. And in the coming days, we are meeting the armed forces. We are meeting SEPs, and we're meeting all the security agencies. In the meantime, there's engagement going on in the communities as well, all in a bid to help people, become more familiar with what their rights are, with what the Constitution says we should do, because it is the guideline and it provides a framework for our existence and how we relate to each other as people.
In the last elections, you did research on matters of concern to the Ghanaian voter.
Yes.
And you do that every election. Overwhelming majority of the people surveyed, about 89% of them indicated they will vote. And yet these 89 people who would go and queue and vote are the same people who don't hold their MP accountable. Which means that your institution has failed to inform these people that these are rights that they have, that they can exercise them and call their MP to order, that the MP cannot take decisions without consulting them.
Not so sure failed is the appropriate word here. Like I said, there are gaps. And we are working to address those gaps. But failed is a pretty strong word, because we have chalked some great successes. For instance, in communities where there's conflict between different categories of leaders, between maybe MPs or local government and chiefs, it's the NCC staff who mediate. In communities where there's real conflict, when it comes to peace building and mediation, NCC does a lot of work as well. For instance, we collaborated with the Media Coalition Against Galamsey, you know, and part of that collaboration was holding town hall meetings in several communities that are close to the Galamsey issue and that are Galamsey endemic communities. And if you ask what happened, you'll be told that actually when it came to convening people, bringing people with different conflicting interests into the same room and forcing them to engage civilly, in a civilized manner, you know, on a very, very hot issue, it was the NCC that could do the facilitation. So for instance, the Galamseyers themselves, the chiefs, landowners of all sorts, local governments, and all these different parties that have different interests, you know, but because NCC does have that clout in those communities, it was through that we're able to mobilize citizens who represent all these different interests to the table to have conversations and discussions about the best way forward as far as Galamsey is concerned. You see, these are things that are very important, but they are almost intangible, you understand? What I've described right now may seem like nothing, but seriously, if you go to a mining, a Galamsey endemic community where there's so much hostility, you know, bordering on violence and stuff like that, and you have nobody who everybody is confident in to assemble different parties to have a discussion, then you are very well on your way to conflict.
I guess the concern
so
is,
my point is that it's not a perfect situation, but definitely it's not a failed.
and you just talked about civil engagement.
Yes.
And earlier you mentioned people willing to call into radio stations when they have issues. One of the major concerns is that we are not very civil when we engage. That on the streets, people just hurl insults at each other, which is a function of, for want of a better expression, a very uncivilized.
Oh, Malik, you have all these strong words. Uncivilized is too harsh.
Well,
no, I would not say that.
I am not saying, I'm saying that's observation others have made, that we almost all the time are ranting and shouting. When we are on radio, we are shouting on top of our voices. People are not making cogent arguments in sober tone. People are out shouting each other. On the street, we are hurling insults at each other, which is all a function of a people not very well educated in terms of their civic rights and the need to be civil.
So tell me, where do you find, which countries are opposite of what you're describing, where everything is sober and civilized as you describe?
Well, not sober and civilized,
exactly.
But where people don't spit on each other on the streets, and people don't sit in buses and spit out.
In which countries
so some argue
does that not happen?
That this is a function of us not being properly educated in terms of living in a civil manner.
Like I said before, there's a lot of work to be done. But to say that we have an uncivilized society, that one I have to disagree with.
That's what some say.
No, well, I don't know about those some. What was the basis for that, for saying that? Argument, shouting across, talking above each other's head, not always listening to each other. Those things are things that happen in every society. Now, if you were saying, for instance, that we are quick to draw swords, we are quick to draw our guns and shoot each other, then I'll say we have a real problem. But as for self-expression, you know that, I mean, we cannot take it away from anybody. So maybe sometimes it goes overboard. But I don't think we have such a big problem when it comes to that. We are not at each other's neck. We're not killing each other. We are having conversations. It's just that we're doing it loudly.
In the last research which you did, which I just referred to, in the 2016 election, a huge majority of people were concerned about electoral violence. You just say we are not quick to draw swords, but the people who go and vote, the major concern for many of them, in your own research, was electoral violence.
Absolutely, that was a great concern. But let's look at the actual elections. Did they degenerate into civil unrest, for instance? There might have been incidents of violence, pockets of incidents of violence. But overall, would you say that that was a violent election? No.
But 42% of the people,
yes,
that
which is a significant number, because it's almost half of the population
absolutely
thought that the election might be violent, but it wasn't.
Nonetheless, they thought it.
But maybe
there must have been a basis.
Maybe they
there
won't
must have
think
been
so
a
now.
basis for their thinking.
The basis is probably because when there are pockets of violence during an election, you know, it gets talked about a lot. There's a lot of discussion around it. There's a lot of tension around elections, as you yourself are aware. So it's kind of hyped up a bit. But if you look at it soberly, how many incidents of violence happen on election day, for instance?
You were talking, so...
Not that many, actually.
Not
very,
that
very
many.
few.
Yeah.
Especially in the last election.
Yes. And it's good you said that, because in the previous elections, they have not been so peaceful.
No, but if you have to be nuanced in looking at these things, because even though there are pockets of violence, it is not an election that will ever be deemed a violent election. You understand what I mean? It doesn't go to a point where things are so bad that it's now being recognized as, you know, a violent election or civil unrest or any of those things. We've never actually pushed to that point. We've come close, probably.
Absolutely. We've been to the precipice.
Yes.
In 2008,
but we've pulled back.
I was on the streets.
So was I.
And shops were closed.
I agree.
It
was a scary day.
The people who don't pull swords and daggers, they should close their shops.
Out of fear.
Over just an election.
It's not just an election. It's an election. Don't say just. It's a very serious exercise.
It was just go and vote and go home.
Yes, but they came back the next day.
Probably if you told us that, look, just go and vote and go home, and you drummed it in everybody's head and we got used to it, that we shouldn't kill each other, there would not have been need for anyone to close their shop.
You know, the education function of NCC is but one of many things that should happen to ensure that we live in a peaceful society. For instance, there's law enforcement, which is not our mandate. You understand? These things have to work together. If you have education without law enforcement, you will not make a lot of headway. You know, because people will do what they will get away with. If they know they will get away with it, they will keep doing it. So we can take responsibility for our part, which is educating people, sensitizing people, getting people to be civic-minded, to be patriotic, to live the values that we all admire, that we all wish that these were the values that govern our society, values of honesty, absence of corruption, truthfulness, showing up on time, all the things that we like to teach children. You know, we could do that. We could do that. But if we are in this situation where we find ourselves, and you're saying that, I have to disagree with you.
Well, okay, so let's talk, and you just talked about responsibility. When you were answering the question on, are we alive to our civic responsibility, rights and responsibilities, you said rights, yes.
More.
Responsibilities.
More than
what's the NCC's concern about civic responsibilities?
Well, the thing is this. As citizens, we have a role to play in ensuring that we have the society that we think we deserve. We have a role, for instance, in paying our taxes. In the last couple of months, NCC, together with Ghana Revenue Authority, have been, you know, rolled out a tax education campaign.
I saw that on your website.
To get people to pay their taxes. Why is this important? It's important because you know that it is our taxes that run a government.
And why are you now doing it? Why didn't you do that 25 years ago, 20 years ago, 10 years ago?
We do it from time to time.
Ago?
You mean what? You mean about the taxes in particular?
Yes.
I don't know that we don't do it for 25 years. We just had a very specific collaboration with GRE. But I'm sure over the years, because we have different themes, every quarter we have a different, you know, set of educational ideas to disseminate to people. So it may have come up, of course, I can't say it off the top of my head, but I'm sure, I don't think that we've never talked about taxes until our collaboration with the Revenue Authority. I'm sure it has come up, but not in that big manner where you're collaborating with another state institution with a very clear, specific goal, with quite a bit of resources to do to make a louder noise and have greater impact.
So apart from taxes, are there any aspects of the national life that you look at and you think, if only we were a little more responsible?
Absolutely. Take sanitation. We have a problem with sanitation in this country. There are different aspects of the problem. There's an education aspect of the problem. There's a law enforcement aspect of the problem. There's aspects of the problem where people actually need places to dump their rubbish. So there are all these different sides. But there's also the individual responsibility aspect of the problem, which we have not addressed as well. So people sit in their cars, unwrap some food, eat, and throw the rubbish out. I put that wrapper in my bag. You understand? Because we can all make the excuse that, oh, but there's no bin here at this. But we can't have a bin, do you understand, every few meters. When you have wrappers or rubbish, you can fold it nicely, wrap it, put it in your bag. When you get to a place where you find the bin, drop it in. If we could adopt that, that is a personal responsibility that if we could all adopt, it will make an impact on the sanitation crisis that we are having right now. You understand? So it's everything. It's patriotism. Why do we have corruption? Why are we engulfed? Why is corruption a constant theme that we are trying to fight? Because we live in a society where it doesn't matter how wealth is made. As long as one is wealthy, we thank God for it. Today I was telling the prison officers that for most people, if you walk down the street and you see a thick wad of dollars, most people will see it as an answer to a prayer. You understand? How many people will see that and think that it is wrong for me to take this because it is not mine?
The people haven't seen the dollars on the ground. They're actually looking for people to take it away from.
You see what I mean? So when it comes to personal responsibility, there's also there's a big gap that, you know, we all need to understand that we have responsibilities as well. We have, if you know that somebody is doing the right thing or the wrong thing, for instance, if you know that your neighbor has a stash of tramadol that they are selling to kids, for instance, do you have a responsibility to report? Or would you say, it's not my problem, he's doing... Do you understand what I mean? So
what would the average Ghanaian say
about this particular...
In an instance like that?
I think many people will report, but not all.
Many will report.
I think many will report, but not enough. Do you understand? So maybe less than half will report, which is still many people. But what happened to the others? And
when you cited that example of the person who just takes the wrapper and throws it off the window, and I said, that is the citizen who must have been educated and informed.
Like I said, education. A lot of people who throw wrappers around, it is not because they don't know that they are doing the wrong thing. It's because they can get away with it. Not everyone. For most people, Raymond, if I catch you throwing wrappers about, for instance, can I make the excuse that it's because Raymond has not been educated? Of course not. Well, I can say that for somebody else, but not for you. But there are many people like you who throw wrappers around. So for those people, they are shirking their responsibility to be good citizens. Do you understand? For those category of people, they are shirking their responsibility. But for others, they may not even know that it's a problem because for them, well, it's a gutter and we dropped it in, you know. The gutter is there and we dropped it in.
So enforcement.
So law enforcement.
Is there any interface between the law enforcement agencies and NCCE? Because what they do and what you do have to work together to produce the kind of society we want.
It's not just law enforcement, it's everybody. Everybody has to work with them. The schools have to work with NCCE. Law enforcement agencies have to work with NCCE. Governments have to work with NCCE. Media has to work with NCCE. You understand? Because we provide the tools for the collaboration to be smooth. So for instance, media. How do we get our message across? How do I mean, your viewership is so high. I'm sitting here today, I'm sure a lot of people are seeing me. But what stops Joy from saying, for instance, on our most highly rated shows, we would donate 2 minutes to NCCE to give out a civic message? That would be great.
But we are doing our part. We are doing sanitation campaign on the Super Morning Show, one of our flagship programs. But we have to take a short break. When we come back, I'll be asking the outcome of what you did with corruption in 2017. You're watching Upfront. My guest is Kathleen Adi. Keep watching. You're welcome, but you're watching Upfront, and we are discussing NCCE and civic education and responsibilities of the Ghanaian. Before we went on the break, I wanted to ask Kathleen, last year, 2017, you did research on corruption, public accountability, and all of that. What was the outcome?
Well, we undertook a survey, and we published the results last year, and it was based on people's experience with corruption, perceptions about corruption. I just want you to know that there was a reason for that research, because in the next couple of years, we are going to be doing a lot of work around anti-corruption. But in order to do that work effectively, we needed to understand how people feel about corruption, how people interface with corruption, people's personal experiences of corruption, people's understanding of what corruption even means. And that's why that research was undertaken. Yes, we launched the report, but that was on the front side. On the back end, what we are doing is that based on that report, we are rolling out programs, you understand? So for instance, our theme, our focus for this Constitution Week is transparency and accountability, because we recognize from the report that there are gaps when it comes to accountability, for instance. There are gaps when it comes, and people don't even understand. People only see corruption as bribery or corruption by politicians. People don't recognize that if you go to your workplace and you abuse resources that are meant for your work, it's also corruption. Do you understand what I mean? Yeah. So even people's understanding of corruption, there are huge gaps. So what we are doing with that report is to help us to roll out our anti-corruption programs that we are doing for the next couple of years.
If the citizenry that elect people into office are the same people who tend to complain about corruption, especially political corruption, and yet these are the people who have the power. In fact, it is their power that they cede to the politician. Do you think they know, the general populace is aware that they can stop the politician from being corrupt?
I think that's the wrong question, Raymond, or the wrong premise. People have to understand that the problem with corruption in this country is not limited to political corruption. For instance, the public service is much bigger than the political class. The general population is much bigger than the political class, yet we have a big corruption problem. And it's not limited to the political class. Now, one of the things we talked about today was the fact that a lot of people can't speak loudly about corruption because most of us are guilty one way or the other. You understand? So it's difficult.
Why is that the case? Why is the average Ghanaian susceptible to corruption? Why is it that when people seek office, whether private or public, there are those who say the predominant view is that there must be opportunities to make money other than what you earn legally. And if those opportunities do not exist, then people shudder to take those offices.
I'll tell you a story. You know, I was appointed last year. Yes, last year.
Yes. You're a big woman.
Oh, I'm not a big woman.
But the appointment letter from the president.
But one of the things that I found interesting was that most people, for months after I went to NCC, would say to me, "But what are you doing in NCC? There's no money there."
People tell you that?
All the time. I found that so interesting. And it was everybody, you know, from the highest to the lowest. People saw me and said, "But why did you go to NCC? There's no money in that place." And then I asked them, "Why are you expecting me to steal?" But yes, I got that.
How did you feel when they said
that? It was an eye-opener. especially from a certain category of people that I got that from, people that I didn't expect. Of course, I expected from some, but
what category of people?
No, let me not go there.
No, don't mention the people.
No,
let's mention the category.
Let me not go
Were
there.
the church people,
well,
people in the mosque?
The people who I got that feedback from, cut across, no exceptions. But people generally, the first thing they said to me was that, but that place, is there money there? But there's no money there. Why did you accept to go there? I got that all the time. And for me, that said something about our psyche and our attitude towards public funds. Because it seems as if people think that if it's public funds and you take it, it's not a crime. You know, that's the impression I got. So that's just, you know, responding to your question about you know, why you think that corruption. I don't know if it's endemic. I just feel like there's a certain attitude. It's almost as if it's almost schizophrenic. When the corruption is huge and it's political, I mean, we get so angry. But
is that anger genuine?
Yes, it's genuine.
Is it?
People are genuinely, of course it's genuine.
The same people who walk up to you and ask you why you are going to an office where there's no money, they are the people who get
schizophrenic
angry
about it, because it's almost like a different person. When it comes to the political class, you know, we get very, very, very angry about corruption. But I keep telling people that this corruption we're talking about is actually theft. Now, if we start to call it theft, it will, I guess people will become more conscious of what they are doing. Because if you go to your office and there's equipment that you're not supposed to take away and you take away, it's corruption.
But
you know,
largely people are looking for that.
If you cut deals, you do these great deals where you shortchange your partner, or you do deals where, you know, the poor are going to get poorer, or the marginalized are going to get even more vulnerable and neglected. Those kinds of things, I mean, but we do it. You understand?
Do you think when people have opportunity to do those deals and make money, their consideration...
They don't see it as corruption.
Is it they don't see?
No, they don't.
But they always hide it. If they don't see it as corruption, if they don't perceive it to be wrong,
people don't hide. People don't hide. People don't hide to show off their wealth, no matter how they got it.
Well, but they hide when they are making it.
No,
and
I don't think
they find a way of covering up.
No. We do not interrogate source of wealth in this country. When people are wealthy, we just accept that they are wealthy. Nobody wants to ask how and why. There's a historical angle to it. You know, there was a time, the revolution time, where people deemed to be prosperous were targeted, you know. So there was a certain, we developed this siege mentality around questioning people with people's wealth, because as soon as you do that, there's a rise in the temperature and a throwback to those days. I think that's part of it. But really, it's really strange. People never question. And if you question, then you're a bad person.
So why do our state institutions, such as yours, who part of your mandate is to deal with all this corruption question, and of course law enforcement agencies, why do they not track people's finances? I build a house, I'm a civil servant, and I build a house that I could not have earned the money legally to build a house. Why doesn't anyone ask me any questions?
Like I said, it's a very delicate, highly sensitive area.
Why?
Because for me, I think that apart from everything else, there's the historical experience that informs the national psyche, you know, about that. And people are nervous about this. But apart from that, there are ways and means of checking. There's a reason why a certain category of public servants have to declare assets, for instance. You understand?
Yeah, but
there's a reason why we have a public accounts committee that is tracking money and ensuring that, you know, money that gets misspent is recouped, that sort of thing. So there are systems in place, but they don't seem to work well. No,
why?
Not as much as well, because, like I said to you during the break, we are a successful democracy, but to qualify it, we would say we're a successful electoral democracy. We do elections very well. In spite of all the problems, we do well at elections. We get accolades That's the latest word, isn't it?
Yeah.
We get our accolades, we paid our dues, we get accolades for elections. What happens between elections is where we don't do so well. Strengthening institutions, enforcing the rule of law, citizens' engagement with the governance and political systems. Those things we haven't done so well.
Is it not the case that there's certain high tolerance for corruption in our society, that as soon as the elections are done, the one half of Ghanaians whose party has won are all looking to get their own peace, and they are not talking legitimate peace, they're talking illegitimate peace, that they don't bother. Those who have lost the election are working hard, they are still enjoying what they got, but they are working hard for another opportunity so they can come create, to borrow from Justice Jones Doche of the Supreme Court, to create loot and share. So there's a high tolerance for corruption. That's why we can't hold anyone accountable, because when we are there, we will do exactly what they are doing.
Well, we haven't been very faithful with law enforcement around corruption. So people feel they can get away with it. So if people feel they can get away with it, they will do it.
That means, again, to my question, if your institution who has a mandate to promote sustained democracy, and one of the major planks of democracy is transparency, accountability, holding everyone accountable, if you sufficiently educated us, well, we will hold them.
We are doing our best, and we will do better. That research that we conducted last year around corruption, I think this is the first time we had conducted a research like that. If you want to tackle corruption, you need to know how people feel about it, how people engage, how people perceive it. So it was a very major step, you know, in our strategy for fighting corruption.
Was there anything in the findings that startled you as far as corruption is concerned?
Well, I would say that it was the fact that people really identified corruption mostly as bribery. You know, so things like embezzlement and stuff. I didn't get the impression, and I don't have the figures here to refer to, but I didn't get the impression from the report that people thought, you know, it will immediately light up the corruption bulb, you know. But bribery, especially the sort that happens by the roadside, and, you know, with the...
so that's why the police always
You see, exactly. So people really see that as corruption. But when it comes to other types of corruption, not so. Well, that surprised me a bit. But like I said, what then happens is that we now tailor our messages, you know, to make sure that those things are addressed.
Have we been too exposed to corruption that we are almost indifferent to it?
I don't think so. I don't think so. Like I said, there's a way in which sometimes you're very angry, but in other ways it seems as if we are tolerant. But as long as there is such palpable public anger when we hear of big white-collar corruption, for me it gives me hope. It tells me that people are not prepared to accept and settle and say, okay, now this is part of our life.
But no one is ever despised in this country because they are perceived to be corrupt. Even those prosecuted,
Absolutely,
the churches and the mosques accept them and give them high places. And to borrow from you, give them accolades. Kathleen, it's been an honor hosting you on UpFront.
I hope you give us more opportunities like this. We are really grateful to Multimedia. And I'd like to say to the citizens of Ghana that NCC is very active on social media now. Our social media pages, NCCGH for Facebook, NCCGH for Twitter, and NCCGH1 for, what's the other one called?
For Twitter? You've done Twitter?
Yes, Twitter and Facebook.
YouTube.
Yes, and Instagram. NCCGH1 for Instagram. Please visit our pages, pick up messages, share we do a lot of broadcasting of civic messages as well. So if that hits your phone, please make sure
we have very loyal viewers. They will be sharing.
So NCCGH for Facebook and Twitter. NCCGH1 for Instagram.
My time is up.
All All
That's
right.
Kathleen Adi,
Thank you so much.
Deputy Chairman of the NCCE in charge of Finance and Administration. She's been my guest on Upfront. Until we come your way again, my name is Malik Abbas Dabu. Bye-bye.